Hey there, Adrienne Elise here. Welcome to the GAIA Daily for August 27th through 30th, 2021. How are you doing? Well, we've just had this very powerful Mercury in Virgo in opposition to Neptune and in trine to Pluto. And this is triggering this beautiful, sweet sextile between Pluto and Neptune. And speaking to the times that we are in and how to break free of the mind control to get out of the nightmare and into the dream. It's a really interesting energy, the sextile with Pluto and Neptune. It's like the core issues of what's gotten us trapped in the old energies of the Piscean age. Neptune in Pisces represents the oneness, the dream, the consciousness of the collective, the connectedness between our consciousness, the oneness principle. But in the Piscean age, that oneness principle was used to control humanity through groupthink and mind control. And the only way that the control energies have been able to keep control over humanity is through two concepts: fear and trauma. So, we have been controlled through these energies. And so it's important to understand that as we go through this period of time of massive cleansing and release of the old stories, those energies are going to come up. And we have to see that we're being given an opportunity to trace these energies back to the origin of where that programming began in a past life, and then of course it's going to replay in early childhood. But you don't have to know exactly, but it's kind of like it's going back to that square one and being like, wait a minute, is there an actual foundation right here in present time in my reality for this energy? And no, because the Pluto and Capricorn is speaking to our structures of authority. And so it's speaking to not the power itself, but what has held sway over the power. So now it's becoming more and more clear that we, as a human soul and body, have the power. We have direct access. But we've been tricked into thinking that we need these structures of control to keep us safe. And so it's a long-held agenda that is beginning to dismantle. And with Mercury, Mars, and the Sun all in Virgo, Mercury rules Virgo, and Virgo is about analytical thinking. And so this powerful astrology is giving us an opportunity to free our mind. Only yourself can free your mind. And if you're really going to go for freedom, as your destiny is calling, then the mind control is going to have to dismantle, and that fear and trauma programming is going to have to come up to be released. This is the healing crisis. We've really literally for the last year and a half been absolutely traumatized through this world situation. And a lot of the trauma has to do with the way that things just don't add up. It's the lies and deceit. And then who are you and where are you in the world as these things start to dismantle? And that's what SuperNova souls, you're here to lead the way in this, because you have soul memory of being in a more full expression of who you are without the mind control programming. So it's a really interesting energy because Mercury, the ruler of Virgo, just came into this dynamic. Now, the opposition with Neptune is tension, but it's tension around the dream. It's about, can we take back our reality? And how do we take back our reality? How do we get out of the control-based nightmare and into the dream of what Earth wants to become? Is a very simple concept and yet very difficult. But for SuperNova souls, it's about coming back into your role as spiritual service. This is what Neptune is in your chart. Neptune is this pinnacle experience of you bringing together everything you've experienced to give back. And this is everything that is really the problem in supernova souls. All of the shame programming, all of the low self-worth, all of the disconnection, all of the separateness is about, it's all connected to your role in service, you know? And so what's coming up in the trauma and the pain for supernova souls is these past lives and this life where you've been cast aside and invalidated. Here you have so much inside of you to offer. And yet it's been rejected. And so now supernova souls have a subconscious rejection of their own spiritual treasures. And yet we're in this massive shift where those spiritual treasures are the absolute wealth of the world that we need right now. I'm feeling a huge shift in this. So take advantage of this. It's like a breaking of the clouds. It's like the door has been opened to step out, to emancipate yourself from this mental slavery. So, because what's so powerful is Mercury rules Virgo. So it's like an analytical exploration of these concepts, you know, and the only way that those authoritarian energies have had control over humanity is through fear and trauma. So this is the programming that has to be unraveled. Now, next week, Mars comes into this configuration. And so we talked about how, okay, so Pluto and Neptune are in 2 degrees apart in this beautiful sextile. They've been coming in and out of this, still 2 degrees out, but very, very powerful energy because they're such big player energies. But those bigger planets are out in the backdrop. And it's not until our personal planets interact with those planets that we really get the gist and feel it come home into our being. And that's what's happening right now. And so Mars next week, we're already starting to feel this, but Mars will be coming into that opposition with Neptune and then trine with Pluto. Now, this is really sweet because when you study the birth chart, particularly of supernova souls, you'll find a dynamic combination typically of the trine energy of support and sextiles, and then oppositions and squares. If you only have the harmonious transits, then it's a lifetime of not really getting anything done. And you have to have that pressure. Now, oppositions are so interesting because it's like opposite, 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 tension, tension, tension. And then when they're directly opposite, there's a mutual exchange of information and balance and harmony. And this is the key to everything, really. And so this is an incredibly dynamic time, and it's like, shoot, just going to slip right out of that lower matrix programming. But maybe understanding that it's all connected to these two simple but painful concepts of fear and trauma. Without those, you know, we wouldn't have gotten here. And it always, when you go to the energy of fear, you ultimately go to the energy of fear of death. So it's about survival. And the control energies have said, oh yeah, you just living on Earth, you poor little helpless things. You need us to survive. You know, instead of allowing the free energy technology that's been around, you know, we're going to pump that shit all through the wires and we're going to charge you for it. And we're going to have to create a whole economy based on building this infrastructure. So that's kind of a metaphorical example of what we're dealing with here, you know? And it's like, well, if you want water, you got to pay your water bill, you know? And it's like, but wait a minute. The truth of our earth, the feminine principle, right? That's been cast aside and hidden and demonized, and hidden in shame. It's like, but that concept is that the earth is regenerating. There's a regenerative force, life force, and we all have direct access. So this is this unraveling on this massive level of these core issues of humanity that's happening right now, has everything to do with this transition into the Aquarian Age. Because the Aquarian Age is about technology coming back into full revelation and only used for the good of humanity and to support our culture, and in clear transparency, right? Because really the only way we got so controlled through technology right now, I mean, literally, if we all understood the level of technology that's going on, that's literally in our media, in our phones, connecting to our brains through, it's too much to get into right now, but it's like literally we're on the road towards being remote controlled beings, except for that this revelation of our own connection to life force is so powerful, and it's more true. It's organic. It's happening on its own. Nothing can stop it. But to like Pavlov's dog is how we're being controlled through media messages with direct stimulation to different parts of the brain. And again, these are very simple concepts. Though stimulation of the Pavlov's dog programming that's happening through media is either an association with fear and anxiety triggered in the consciousness, or pleasure. Okay. And so those concepts that they want you to associate, so you see, you put those two together and it's like, oh, fear, anxiety. Okay. It's like we are literally rats in the lab. But coming back to this astrology, it's about that doorway opening and the light coming through and stepping right through out of this mind control energy. And so it's like, if you don't know you're under mind control, then how do you even get out? So this is why supernova souls, this period of time has been so difficult and oppressive. It's because you did not concede to the program. It's because you're still questioning. It's because you're still are in your consciousness and your spiritual will devoted and dedicated to truth and to your own evolution. And why you are poised in this perfect position to come back into the planetary healer that you are, even though you were rejected and cast aside. So this is what's going on, because it's so powerful, because that sextile. Now, Pluto and Capricorn is those authority structures that have had been holding power, right? All the way back to Atlantean time. Every single time a bright starseed advanced soul comes into this evolution or is incarnated, there's been a direct attack on that light, because they don't want us to know that we have direct access to the power. Now, Neptune in Pisces is that oneness principle, the spiritual revelation, and it's the highest pinnacle expression of of humanness, which is when you are in full spiritual service. And this is what's been stripped and taken from the supernova soul, right? By this persecution, being cast aside, being called the darkness. And so this is the deep and profound esoteric depression that comes forward in supernova souls as you go through your awakening process. It's like you can't get through without this feeling. And a deep and profound grief, feeling left alone here, feeling like everyone that you trusted turned against you. And yet this story is coming to a close. And it all has to do with this Virgo energy, which I see a very interesting energy of Virgo. The role that Virgo plays in the birth chart of supernova souls is this role as a planetary healer, meaning just you're aware consciously, you're working with energies, you're working with a collective. You were there from the beginning of the vision of what this earth wants to become, the beautiful Eden star, this journey that we're on together. And so you have this diamond inside of you, this treasure, and yet so far away. And are we ever going to make it through? And what is going on with all these crazy people that can't seem to use logic and think, right? And so when you're in that place, basically we've all been going through this very alone, right? Very separate. And yet the reason you've gone through it is because you still have that God code alive within you. You still have that memory of the bigger truth of who you are. And the bigger truth of who you are is spiritual service. It's just the definition, And there's that really beautiful revelation that came forward around using the energy, the medicine that's available to us in the rocks, the plants and trees and the animals, and how they show up in absolute dedication and service in every moment. And what if we just started doing that? What if getting outside of mind control, taking back our own direct connection to source was simply about claiming our role as planetary healer? It's not an identity. See, this is where we kind of got trapped in the past, is through our identity as a healer and a specific role or something we're supposed to accomplish specifically, right? It's not about that. It's about who you are in your essence, in the soul, in the experiences you've had over many lifetimes and evolutions, which cannot be taken from you, no matter what they do to your physical body in this lifetime or others. It only gets stronger. So the way out of the trap, the way we take back our sovereignty, our sovereign mind, our sovereign pursuit of our spiritual truth, is through coming back into this spiritual service of validating, self-validating, right? Self-soothing, and recognizing who you are as a soul, that everything wrong and everything hard is only about this. And what if you start showing up in every moment of every day, like, oh yeah, I'm here, I'm in spiritual service, which means I'm rolling with God. I'm God consciousness in action. Whoa! It feels so good. And it doesn't have to be anything. You don't have to know what's around the corner. You don't have to, it's a surrender to this bigger part of you that has not been able to fully land here. It's a disconcerting experience because all of this ancestral trauma and garbage energy is just cleansing out of the DNA very quickly. And it brings a feeling of like, who am I? What am I doing? There's no ground under my feet. I'm totally disconnected from my family and friends. I don't even know how this happened. Like all of that just serves to validate this truth of who you are. So this configuration of astrology is so incredibly profound because it's like that Neptune in Pisces represents the nightmare, because the control energy that has used collective consciousness and mind control energy, groupthink, to keep humanity under control. And yet it's the dream of us all coming back into our role as God consciousness. And so the Pluto and Capricorn and the sextile between them is like this perfect ticket, the golden ticket, right? Out of the matrix. And so, because it's like, okay, we get out of the power control energy by coming back into the truth of the mystical spiritual revelation that is our soul, fully advanced soul landing home here on earth in our bodies. This is happening. I'm seeing it happen. And it's also metaphorically happening with very powerful beings, very pure, very big, huge light beings incarnating right now as babies, coming into conception of form. And at the same time, supernova souls awakening to that bigger truth and that bigger potential, and everything that's been so hard and everything that you've had to wallow through, especially in this last period of time of collective trauma, replaying, it's like the collective trauma is about replaying the deep-seated, it's that healing crisis, right? How are we going to release this deep-seated trauma programming that goes back thousands of years, And this is how it's happening. And so for you, as a planetary healer, that feels like you were not allowed to do your work you were here to do, it's excruciatingly painful because you feel the energy of the collective. You feel the isolation. You feel the loneliness. You feel the, and then of course, then supernova souls have like go ahead and you feel all that, and then you find yourself beating yourself up because you're not doing more, or you're not fixing it, or you're not healing yourself, or you didn't do enough work, and blah, 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 and all that is being washed away. And so this is our ticket out And so Mars coming into this configuration, right? So Venus did this and then Mercury. Now Mars is going to be coming into this configuration, and Mars says it's go time. Like, come on, let's go, let's move, let's do this, right? And so this that will peak out next week, basically Labor Day weekend in the US. That will kind of peak out, and next week and the full all of next week we'll kind of be feeling that. Now, it's really interesting because on the exact day, which is Labor Day, or right around there, Labor Day, and then in the US, Mars makes that trine with Pluto. And on the same day, Venus in Libra makes a square with Pluto. So, when we really pay attention to these details, there's so much positive clarity that can come from this, and taking advantage of these moments, because again, we have the trine and the square. So Mars is in a sweet harmonious trine, Virgo breaking out of the mold, breaking out of those control structures, emancipating the mind, and then Venus, the feminine, in square to Pluto, which is these control structures. Because going back to how humanity has actually been kept in slavery is through the decimation, the rejection, the separation of the feminine. There's been a long held agenda all the way back to Atlantean time to separate our right and left brain. You can have creative thinking or you can have intellectual thinking, right? And so this is really powerful because Venus in Libra speaks to the balance of the masculine and feminine coming back to the garden. That's all Venus in Libra wants. Venus rules Libra. It's very strong. Now, Venus empowered this feminine, pulled out of the gutter and coming directly into square with Pluto, coming directly up against those structures of power control. And saying, hey, this can only happen because of the separation of the masculine and the feminine, and particularly in our brain and our thinking. Because the only way we get back to oneness consciousness in our heart is to balance this masculine and feminine. So the feminine coming back into the garden and recognizing that that's the only thing that's kept us from our power is that it's like the feminine represents the creative flow of life, the regeneration. See, free energy. So it's like everything. Our casting aside of the feminine was the crucial piece that's kept us in slavery. And so now we're healing that, and we're coming back to the garden and joining together our right and left brain. So this is exactly the energy that is around kind of escaping those mind control programs. And so it's a time to pay very close attention to your thought patterns, and you'll be able to more clearly identify the programming and be like, no, and go back to that place in the garden and go back to your heart. So very powerful dynamic energies right there next week and next weekend. And now also, but this week leading up to that, we've got, so Mars coming into that dynamic situation, and we have the sun in Virgo coming into square with the nodes of the moon. And so this is really powerful because the nodes of the moon speak to our future destiny and what's holding us back from the past. And so it's everything we've been talking about, because in Virgo, it's about this healer, this identity, this part of you that is a planetary healer. That's the only reason you're here. It's the only reason you went through all you've gone through to be here, conscious, present, breathing in a body on Earth in this evolution right now. You don't understand how powerful it is to be here, and that you are a chosen one. And so that energy of the sun in square to the nodes is like, okay, how are we going to get, what's keeping us from moving forward? What's holding us in the back. How do we move forward? The North Node in Gemini, the North Node and the South Node coming to the end of their experience through the end of the year. But it's like these last degrees of these signs. In North Node in Gemini, communication, truth, leadership, the voice, expression, and intellectual oratory skills, right? And so then we've got, so the truth is what moves us forward. And in the South Node in Sagittarius is these old stories that we were talking about, where you've gotten stuck in the past because there was a specific thing you thought you were supposed to do in a past life. This is really, you have to understand that, like, so much of your problems we talked about is because you are an advanced soul. And then imagine going through these lifetimes, lifetime after lifetime, where you weren't able to complete what you came here to do. And then you got all kind of caught up in those stories, those specific roles that you thought you were playing out, or you were playing out. But then every single lifetime, we get a new role, a new body, a new personality, and kind of a role to play. It's almost like the clothes we're wearing in this lifetime. And that's exactly what the sun represents. It also represents the true light, our true direct connection to source as God consciousness, as fractals and pieces of God. So the sun in Virgo is about your true role as that planetary healer. And it's really interesting because I'm seeing this part of the, like I was saying, the trauma for the supernova soul is being an aware soul, and yet this has been hidden from us. These records, the last thing they want us to do is access our own records, because in our records, we can find who we really are. And who you really are as a planetary healer has been buried in the rubble, And so here you are, this advanced soul with, I've just seen this in supernova stories and working with individual sessions with supernova souls. It's like this incredible awareness. Like, say an example of this is because of your soul experiences, coming into this incarnation and being aware as a baby, being aware as a soul in the womb, being aware as a baby, being aware of what you have to face yet again in this earth evolution, the pain, the separation, the loneliness, the feeling of being left alone, and unprotected, And so it's weird because you have that level of consciousness, and yet your past life memories are locked away, And so it just speaks to this whole unfair playing field we've been playing in, where it's like, okay, so you have all this awareness and you can feel all the collective energy and you're but you can't access the truth of who you are in those records to be able to move forward and show up as who you are, right? So, wow, that makes me think that this period of time in this next couple of weeks is about, you could have some past life memories kind of seep through. And it's interesting because it's like in all the past life stories that I've, pictures that I've looked at for supernova souls, it's like there's a lot of trauma there. And it's almost like we got to get through that trauma stories to get to those lifetimes that are locked underneath, which is where we can see our full potential, and really understand who we are as souls. And again, it's like what's happening is this a descending, a landing home. We talk about spiritual ascension, but it's really bringing home here to earth our bigger spiritual truth and fully landing home. And it's really just, it feels really weird because this big light of who you are and more of your truth, but it's been hidden from you, is trying to land. And all that you thought you were is falling away and erupting and exposing itself. And it's just a very, very confusing time. But it all points to one thing. We are breaking free out of this mind control and coming back to the garden. Now, speaking of this, on Monday, or Tuesday, Mercury moves over into the sign of Libra. And Mercury will be taking a retrograde. Yes, we're already back to the next Mercury retrograde. But Mercury, the mind, our conceptual reality in Libra, is speaking to exactly what we're talking about, coming back to this garden place. Can't we just have harmony? Can't we just have peace? Can't we just heal the trauma already? Enough of these old stories. And so Mercury retrograde in Libra is really important around freeing our mind, coming back to our permission to have our right and left brain work together and our heart-centered consciousness. Now, along these lines, it might be helpful to remember that the attack you might feel, there's these blooms of psychological attack, as this stuff is clearing, this old stuff coming up and all the ancestral programming, because you can't bring the light in this way without the release of those old dark stories, right? And so, but you can also, as this heart consciousness begins to awaken, it's like, oh yeah, there's the mind, there's the mental, and everything that is around mental control right now and the programming and the mind control is all about using the psychology of humanity. And that's, so we can circumvent that by this heart consciousness, that's heart intelligence, right? We've got intelligent cells in our heart, a brain. And we also have a brain in our stomach, right? And our reproductive organs. We've got these intelligent cells. And so when these things come up, it's kind of helpful to be like, well, that's the psychological brain. I'm going to go to my heart brain and evaluate it from there. So rapid healing, an opportunity to get out of the mind control trap, a descending of this God consciousness as you and your bigger self landing home. But that light is pushing out all those old stories, so it's an interesting thing because it's like, I feel a huge shift in our permission to embody right now. There's been a shift in the energy, but at the same time, you bring that light in, it's going to flush out all the stuff you haven't been able to look at or see, or, the family stuff. And so just know that this is an incredibly dynamic time about escaping the mind control and programming and conditioning. And yet it's blooming the trauma and the fear programming as well, because it's that healing crisis. And this is this dynamic time. Now, the sun square the nodes is exact on Sunday and this weekend. So this is the energy we're working with right now. And this is a destiny play. It's like, hey, who are you really? And the sun in Virgo is this buried and hidden. A lot of times in this, I'll see in the birth chart of supernova souls, this energy of like, whoa, you have incredible power within you, these intuitive gifts and skills, but like you are so far away from that, especially this concept of this planetary healer. This energy of working with consciousness, and you wouldn't be so blown away by what you do when you're not in a body and the way you're able to help souls, like transition. And yet here you are just like quarantined, alone, stuck, disconnected from this power. And that's all resolving, right? It's like it all has to resolve for us to get over this powerful place we're at of the shift of ages. And so it's like a reconciliation with who you really are and who you thought you were. But the sun square the nodes is a pressure to come into that role as a planetary healer that you are, and to show up in this garden, claiming back that oneness consciousness and stepping out of the old stories. But of course, there will be that bloom of stories. So, but this is the thing, right? I'm seeing all of this manipulation being so much about making sure humanity doesn't know they have this direct access to their own energy, and making sure the advanced souls don't remember who they are. The only way they've been able to keep you under wraps is because they know who you are, because they've got time travel and awareness of your lifetimes. And But as long as you don't know who you are not a threat, right? So do you see this place we've been in and why it's been so intense? And now the light of you is descending. Nothing can stop it. It's coming in. Do you feel it? It's landing. And so those old stories are bound to come up, but underneath those old stories is the truth of who you really are as a soul. And the truth of who you really are as a soul isn't the role you played, although there could be clues there, right? But it's like, whoa, you might find yourself with direct access or a living memory, to, direct access to these records, a past life memory, something playing out very clearly that's like, oh, oh, all right. This is the energy of the key. So now that's interesting because today, we've got Venus opposite Chiron. And Chiron is the shape, the symbol for Chiron is the key. Chiron is a wounded healer. It's an asteroid representing the deep wounds. Now, Chiron is an essence energy that speaks directly to the supernova soul because Chiron is a pattern of woundedness that has played out throughout Earth evolution for you, right? And so it very much speaks to the story of the supernova soul. Chiron in Aries is life and death, where you've been killed for who you are, where your life force has been directly stolen from you, and where you had to concede your power in order to stay alive. Now, wait a minute. This is exactly what we were talking about. This is the fear programming of survival that's kept all of us playing small. So this Chiron in Aries is like a release of this soul groups back into like, maybe it's this feeling like as an advanced soul, you were targeted lifetime after lifetime, and then you came in this lifetime and you're kind of waiting for them to come for you. And then they're not coming for you. So now you got to figure out what you're going to do and who you really are. That's kind of the energy, Aries is life and death, it's survival. And this is exactly what's kept humanity down. So really interesting because Venus and Libra opposite, Venus is like, please just let me be in the garden. Can I just be supported again? Can it just be peaceful and harmonious? And, but that's the thing. Libra can choose harmony over reality, right? And avoid reality. But, and so that Chiron in Aries is the reality, like, yeah, you can go ahead and stay in your compensated denial and delusion and find a little bit of peace, right? We want world peace. We're not going to stand for anything less because we've seen the garden. We remember. And we're not scared anymore of you and your false Oz power behind the curtain. Because now we can feel this, so Chiron in Aries is this release of back to our own direct connection to source. And then that programming, see these soul groups leading the way, it's very powerful. That programming of survival fears just can't hold. So it's all unraveling right before our eyes, but it's not just unraveling to unravel. It's unraveling because the light is descending. We're in the second birth for all of us, and the time of revelation and the rebirth of Christ consciousness through whole groups of people. And that's what's happening to you. This wholeness is trying to land. And so we're being given this astrology is just like, whoa, wait a minute. We're rewiring our complete psyche. It's such a radical change from the way we've been living to what is being called for us to move into in our potential. So just keep that in mind. Everything that's been hard, everything that's been difficult, and especially this last year and a half of trauma, it's all validating who you are as this planetary healer. And are you going to step into this place? And of course, we've got that South Node Sag really pulling at us, being like, but wait, I got to figure out what I'm supposed to do and how do I do it? And I got to figure it out all by myself, and I got to take the right steps. And what if I'm scared and nobody's here to help me and nobody even notices what's going on? And, and so it's like, whew, it's not about a specific thing. And this is our way out of the trap, our way forward. So can we express the Gemini truth of who we are outside of these old stories of what we thought we were? And yet those old stories might be popping through in order to be cleared in a very clear way. You might get this dramatic insight of these a specific past life story just playing out before your eyes, but be open to that. So really powerful energy and dynamic times. Of course, though, we're already moving into, Mercury moves into retrograde shadow on the 7th. So it's interesting. We have that bloom of this Pluto astrology, Venus square Pluto, Mars trine Pluto, trying to come out from underneath the structures of authority that have kept us from our own sovereignty, our own mind. And then Mercury will be coming right after the next day on the 7th, moves into retrograde shadow. So the Mercury will not take a retrograde until the 20th. It won't turn retrograde till the end of September, but we're already going to start feeling that energy. And it's a rewiring. And let's get back to the garden. And so very, very powerful. And then Mercury will turn direct on October 18th. And then Mercury completes its whole cycle and comes out of retrograde shadow. Get this, November 3rd. One full year since the elections in the US, which we've been under a complete cloud and shroud and weirdness since then. I mean, even before then, right? But so that's an interesting time. And so this next period of time, because it's very powerful, when Mercury takes a retrograde in a sign, typically Mercury moves through a sign so quickly, almost, just like in less than a month, it'll move through a sign here. It's been, cruising right along. Now, Mercury turning retrograde, it doesn't actually go backwards, but to our visible place on Earth, it does seem to go backwards. It's actually closer to the Earth and has more of an effect on us. So Mercury retrograde will mean that Mercury will be in Libra for 2.5+ months. And that's a long time for Mercury to be in Libra. And it's kind of like Mercury, the discrimination, the mind, thinking through things and trying to come out of this mind control. But then that the Libra inviting us into the garden, back into the garden, the perfect balance, the harmony, claiming that peace, claiming peace of mind, right? We have no idea the level of psychological control we've been under, and specific souls that have not played along with the game are under even more attack. And but this is what this is unraveling. So this is what these next few months is about. And a really powerful clue for us here, supernova souls, it's about coming back into our role as that planetary healer, claiming it. We don't need anybody to tell us. That dramatic picture just showed us. You just went and journeyed into your Akashic records. You don't need any validation. Here we've been stuck feeling like, because we've been persecuted, in order to survive, right? We have to have that recognition and validation that to stay safe. And it's like, no. What if they're operating in a completely different paradigm? There's no way they can validate you. And everything's worked against it. And so it's like, you have to, only yourself can free your mind. And we've got to stand back in our place as these planetary healers. So we came here for the next chapter, right? We made it through this one. Let's clean it up, right? And let's go back to the garden. And let's take our rightful place back as in that full service, which is existing in God consciousness and allowing it to unfold. There's a huge energy of surrender here, not surrender to the dark forces, okay, fine, I'll listen to the messages. Everybody else is doing it. I better go do it. A surrender to that bigger truth of who you are and getting out of the way, letting those old stories fall away, being in that uncomfortable place of no ground under your feet, because now you're floating. It's about plasma. Don't worry about it. Your grand plan isn't something you can plan. You got to get out of the way and allow it to happen, not roll over, So it's a really interesting time, incredibly dynamic and supportive to slip through the mind control and the programming and take your rightful place right there with the angels, who you are, and show up in this full, loving experience of the garden and let that beautiful destiny unfold step by step in front of you. You don't get to know, and you don't need to know. All you need to do is show up in that full presence of who you really are, which is being revealed to you over these next weeks and months. So let's stay together. It sounds really exciting, these concepts coming through. We have a new moon coming up exactly on that day, Labor Day, right when we have Mars trine Pluto and Venus square Pluto. And that's right in the middle of Virgo, the new moon in Virgo. So that maybe look out for that activation, because that might be a really great way for us to come together and crack open that sealed records, and have those past life pictures that can show you who you are, get that confirmation, affirmation, come back to the garden where those positive, it's like, this alone, disconnected, left alone here. It's like we got to go through that to get back to all of those benevolent guides that are in the non-interfering program, right? Free will, non-interference. And so it's like, until we can receive that back, until we own and know on a cellular level who we are, then we can't really step back into our place as that planetary healer. But how profound, I'm just seeing these powerful energies of love that are not, they're working in the free will universe. They're not able to interfere. And all these advanced souls that are those angels, but here on earth feeling so disconnected, so left alone and so traumatized, and yet then coming to the recognition of who they are as that angelic presence and taking your rightful place. And how powerful and profound. So I've seen this again and again, where souls will work together from different sides of the veil, souls in a body, souls not in a body, working on a project together. And it's almost like that's exactly, and how powerful. You're here on the ground, and all you have to do is remember who you are, and you can take your rightful place there. And then you don't have to be here on the ground alone anymore. You're walking with a host of angels, and you are one of those angels, but you get to be in a body actually here. You are the absolute key, because this is what's come forward. It's like the non-interfering, working in the laws of the one consciousness, and that this is a free will universe. And then, so it's like, unless you ask for help, the forces cannot intervene and help, right? But you being aware of your role and your place, and all of a sudden, instead of being completely alone, you're walking with a host of angels in everything you do. And maybe, ironically, that's what can open us up to that direct connection to our soul group. Coming back to this has been a huge bloom. We were really making way and coming together as supernova souls. And then all of a sudden there was this bloom of this old fear programming. And it was kind of like everybody ran back in their cave, no, I'm here alone. I'm supposed to be isolated. It's like, but maybe that's all a play of this process, giving us the opportunity to recognize that programming and step back into the light. And maybe it's like when we come back into our place in the angelic realm as a planetary healer, then we can find our people here on earth. right? Then we feel safe enough and open enough and worthy and valid to be able to walk again and live and breathe with our brothers and sisters. We know we're here, but it feels like a very painful quarantine, you know. Oh, that's by design, you know, and the design is by the control energies, right? And now we're moving to intelligent design. So maybe that can be kind of like a metaphor that can help you. Your life is moving to intelligent design, which is like about working with this oneness consciousness with your grand plan, not knowing necessarily, but it unfolding in front of you, not about planning and manipulating from your lower human self, but allowing and surrendering to this bigger you. And that then it can unfold. So very interesting times. Let me know how you're doing. So dynamic, moment to moment changes. Don't get attached to anything that you feel, because it's just a lot cleansing out. And yet that cleansing out can make you feel like you're lost and you have no idea who you are, but you're really finding out who you are in that bigger self. So really, really beautiful opportunities for us here. And just, it's one of those times, I keep saying it, right? Just stay present. Don't miss a minute. It's happening. We're here. We did it. We're together. And now we get to get on with the next phase. So much love to you, Supernova souls. Thank you so much for being with me. I so appreciate your support. And it's an honor to show up and to facilitate this wisdom. It's coming from your higher self through me. You know, I never plan what I'm going to say. You bringing your energy brings these messages for all of us, and we're working together, whether or not you can feel that or not. But this next phase is about feeling it, knowing it. Who feels it knows it, right? So feel into this connection with your soul group and imagine, or maybe holding that picture that you're coming back into your angelic place in order to come back into your soul group in real time, real existence here on planet Earth. So very beautiful pictures for us. Thank you for being with me. I look forward to seeing you soon, and look out for that Labor Day activation for that Virgo new moon. So I look forward to seeing you soon on the next update. Until then, I'm Adrienne Elise. Namaste.